Welcome to another deep exploration here on Keen 7 Lore, where we uncover the hidden stories and forgotten mysteries within gaming's most compelling worlds. Today, we're venturing into the luminous heart of Nibel to examine one of gaming's most enigmatic guardians, the spirit tree from the Ori series. In the depths of Nibel Forest, where ancient roots penetrate soil older than memory itself, stands a being that defies simple classification. The spirit tree watches, it remembers, it mourns. Most players encounter this colossal guardian as a narrator, a plot device that sets Ori's journey in motion with a desperate call that echoes across the forest. But what if I told you that beneath that weathered bark beats something far more complex than a simple magical tree? What if every whisper of wind through its leaves carries the weight of countless memories? Every glow from its core pulses with the preserved consciousness of generations past. And every decision it makes stems from a sentience so profound that it challenges our very understanding of what it means to be alive. The spirit tree of Nibel harbors secrets that Moon Studios wove into every frame, every piece of environmental storytelling, every haunting note of the soundtrack. These aren't just theories pulled from thin air, they're revelations hidden in plain sight, waiting for those willing to look beyond the surface of this masterfully crafted narrative. Today, we're peeling back the layers of bark and light to expose the true nature of Nibel's eternal guardian, exploring not just what the spirit tree is, but who it has been, what it remembers, and the terrible price it pays for every miracle it performs. As we journey through this exploration, we'll uncover how the spirit tree operates as a living archive of souls, preserving the essence of every spirit that has ever graced Nibel's sacred grounds. We'll examine the true relationship between Seir, that golden light that guides us through will of the Wisps, and the consciousness that resides within the ancient wood. We'll confront the uncomfortable truth about what happens when a being absorbs and maintains the memories of the dead, and we'll trace the threads of destiny that bind certain creatures, like the owl Kuro, to the spirit tree in ways that transcend simple forest magic. Beyond the bark, the sentient guardian. The first truth we must confront about the spirit tree is perhaps the most fundamental. This is not merely a magical plant. The evidence of true sentience, of conscious thought and emotional depth permeates every interaction we witness throughout both games. When the spirit tree narrates Ori in the blind forest, we're not hearing some omniscient force of nature speaking in metaphors. We're hearing a father's voice, heavy with regret, recounting the tragedy that befell his children. Consider the specific language the spirit tree uses when describing the events that led to Ori's separation from Nibel. The tree doesn't speak in the detached tones of a historian or the mechanical recitation of facts. Instead, every word drips with personal investment, with the weight of decisions made and consequences endured. When the tree speaks of calling out to find Ori, there's desperation in that admission, not the instinctive reaction of a plant seeking its seed, but the deliberate, conscious choice of a parent searching for their lost child. The dual nature of the spirit tree's existence becomes clearer when we examine what Moon Studios has confirmed about these ancient beings. A spirit tree consists of two distinct yet intertwined entities, the physical tree that serves as a vessel and the light that grants it consciousness and power. This isn't a case of possession or parasitism, it's a symbiotic fusion, where both elements maintain their individual characteristics while creating something greater than their separate parts. The tree provides stability, a physical anchor in the material world, while the light brings awareness, memory, and the ability to manipulate the spiritual energy that flows to all living things in Nibel. This sentience manifests in subtle ways throughout our journey. Notice how the spirit tree's light dims and brightens in response to emotional moments, not just magical expenditure. When Ori first returns to the tree's embrace, the surge of light isn't just a gameplay mechanic showing restoration, it's joy, relief, and love made visible. The tree has been searching, worrying, and hoping for 10 years. These aren't the programmed responses of an enchanted forest guardian following ancient protocols. They're the genuine emotions of a being that thinks, feels, and suffers. The environmental storytelling reinforces this consciousness at every turn. Throughout Nibel, we see evidence of the spirit tree's active cultivation and protection of the forest. The placement of spirit wells, those pools of rejuvenating energy, follows patterns that suggest deliberate planning rather than random growth. They appear at crucial junctions, near dangerous passages, and in places where a traveler might need respite. This is the work of an intelligence that understands the needs of those who traverse its domain, anticipating danger and providing sanctuary. But perhaps the most compelling evidence of the spirit tree's sentience lies in its capacity for error and regret. A mere force of nature doesn't make mistakes, it simply acts according to its nature. The spirit tree, however, carries the burden of choice and consequence. When it called out for Ori, unleashing the desperate light that would blind Kuro and set the entire tragedy in motion, this wasn't an automatic response or a predetermined event. It was a decision made in a moment of parental desperation, with ramifications the tree couldn't have foreseen. The tree's narration reveals an understanding of cause and effect that goes beyond simple observation. It comprehends not just what happened, but why it happened and what it meant. When describing Kuro's transformation from grieving mother to vengeful force of destruction, the spirit tree doesn't condemn or justify, it understands. This level of emotional intelligence, this ability to empathize even with those who would destroy it, speaks to a consciousness that has grappled with moral complexity. We also see evidence of the spirit tree's sentience in its relationship with other spirits and creatures of Nibel. The tree doesn't just provide life energy or serve as a magical battery for the forest. It maintains individual relationships, recognizes specific beings, and responds differently to each. The unique connection it shares with Ori isn't just because Ori is a spirit born from its light. It's because the tree knows Ori, remembers Ori's earliest moments, and maintains that emotional bond across years of separation. The decay that spreads through Nibel during the tree's blindness isn't merely the absence of magical maintenance. It's what happens when a conscious guardian can no longer actively protect what it loves. The withering of the forest reflects not just the loss of life energy, but the absence of deliberate care, of conscious intervention, of a thinking being's ability to problem solve and adapt to threats. Seir and Sein, manifestations of will. The relationship between the spirit tree and its light manifestations, Sein in Blind Forest and Seir in Will of the Wisps, reveals layers of complexity that most players never fully grasp. These aren't simply magical GPS systems or gameplay mechanics dressed up as characters. They represent something far more profound. The spirit tree's consciousness extending beyond its physical form, its will made manifest in pure light. Sein, that glowing orb that accompanies Ori throughout the first game, speaks with a voice eerily similar to the spirit tree itself. This isn't coincidence or lazy voice acting. It's deliberate design meant to hint at a deeper truth. Sein is described as the light and eyes of the spirit tree, but this description understates the reality. Sein is a fragment of the tree's actual consciousness, a piece of its mind given form and agency. When Sein guides Ori through Nibel's corrupted regions, offering advice and exposition, we're literally hearing the spirit tree's thoughts filtered through this luminous avatar. The implications of this connection run deep. Every piece of knowledge Sein possesses, every memory it shares, every emotional response it displays, these all originate from the spirit tree's vast reservoir of experience. When Sein speaks of ancient events or hidden dangers, it's not accessing some cosmic database of forest information. It's remembering, drawing from the spirit tree's own accumulated memories spanning generations of guardianship. But Seir, the golden light we encounter in Will of the Wisps, represents an evolution of this concept. Where Sein was a single unified manifestation, Seir begins as 5 separate wisps, each containing a portion of what should be whole. This fragmentation isn't just a plot device to give Ori something to collect. It represents the fundamental damage done to the spirit tree's consciousness when its light is scattered. Each wisp carries not just power, but actual pieces of the tree's mind, its memories, its ability to think and feel coherently. The voice, the eyes, the memory, the heart, and the strength, these aren't arbitrary categories. They represent the fundamental aspects of consciousness itself. The voice allows communication and expression of thought. The eyes provide perception and understanding of the physical world. The memory maintains continuity of self and experience. The heart enables emotional connection and empathy. The strength grants the will to act and effect change. Separated, these wisps leave the spirit tree diminished, not just in power, but in its very ability to exist as a complete sentient being. When Ori gathers these wisps throughout Will of the Wisps, we witness something remarkable, the gradual reconstruction of a consciousness. Each wisp that returns to form Seir doesn't just add magical power, it restores a piece of the spirit tree's mind. The growing coherence of Seir's communication, its increasing ability to guide and assist, directly correlates to the reunification of these cognitive fragments. By the time all 5 wisps merge into complete Seir, we're no longer dealing with a simple light construct, but with a fully realized extension of the spirit tree's consciousness. This explains Seir's remarkable ability to not just guide, but to make complex decisions, to understand context and nuance, to respond to unprecedented situations with creativity rather than programmed responses. When Seir helps Ori navigate the corrupted territories of Niwen, it's applying genuine intelligence, drawing from the spirit tree's vast experience while adapting to entirely new challenges. The light doesn't just illuminate paths, it problem solves, strategizes, and even displays what can only be described as personality. The evolution of Seir throughout Will of the Wisps also reveals something crucial about the spirit tree's relationship with its light. As the tree weakens from sustaining the corruption in Niwen, Seir grows stronger and more independent. This isn't a parasitic relationship where one thrives at the expense of the other. Instead, it suggests that the tree can consciously invest more of itself into its light manifestation when necessary, essentially decentralizing its consciousness to preserve it. Consider the moment when Seir achieves its complete form. The golden light doesn't just become more powerful, it becomes more articulate, more emotionally resonant, more capable of independent action. This is the spirit tree's consciousness achieving a form of backup, ensuring that even if the physical tree fails, something of its mind, its memories, its essential self will endure in the light. The true extent of this connection becomes heartbreakingly clear in the game's climax. When Ori embraces Seir to become the new spirit tree of Niwen, we're not witnessing just a transfer of power. Ori is accepting Seir's consciousness, which is to say, accepting the previous spirit tree's memories, knowledge, and perhaps even aspects of its personality. The merger doesn't just create a new spirit tree, it ensures continuity of consciousness across generations, preserving not just the role of guardian, but the accumulated wisdom and experience of all who came before. This preservation of consciousness through light also explains certain mysterious elements in both games. The visions Ori experiences, the sudden understanding of ancient mechanisms, the intuitive knowledge of Nibel's and Niwen's hidden paths, these aren't just gameplay conveniences. They're moments when the consciousness within the light shares its vast repository of memory and experience. Through Sein and Seir, the spirit trees can transcend the limitations of their rooted forms, extending their awareness and agency throughout their domains. The Archive of Souls, Memory Preservation Theory. Perhaps the most unsettling and profound aspect of the spirit tree's nature lies in its role as a living repository of the dead. While never explicitly confirmed in dialogue, the evidence woven throughout both games suggests that spirit trees don't just nurture life, they preserve it, absorbing and maintaining the memories, experiences, and perhaps even the consciousness of every spirit that falls within their domain. The foundation for this theory rests in the very nature of light within the Ori universe. We know from confirmed lore that light can contain memories, thoughts, and emotions. It's not simply energy, it's information given luminous form. When a spirit dies in Nibel or Niwen, their light doesn't simply dissipate into nothingness. The careful observer will notice how fallen spirits seem to dissolve into motes of light that drift upward, drawn inexorably toward the spirit tree's canopy. This isn't mere artistic flourish. It's a visualization of absorption, of preservation, of the tree gathering what remains of the departed into itself. The concept of ancestral trees provides another crucial piece of this puzzle. According to the deeper lore, when spirits die, they can create an ancestral tree, though not all such trees survive the harsh realities of their environment. These trees aren't just monuments or grave markers, they're continuations, preserving something essential of the spirit that created them. If individual spirits can achieve this limited form of preservation, imagine what a fully realized spirit tree, with its vast power and ancient knowledge, could accomplish. This preservation theory explains one of the most mysterious aspects of Ori's journey, the visions and echoes encountered throughout both games. When Ori experiences sudden flashes of the past, glimpses of events they never witnessed, or intuitive understanding of ancient mysteries, these aren't random magical visions. They're memories bleeding through from the spirit tree's vast archive, moments when Ori's connection to the tree allows access to the experiences of spirits long past. Consider the specific nature of these visions. They're not just visual recreations, but full sensory experiences, complete with emotional resonance and contextual understanding. Ori doesn't just see what happened, they feel it, understand it on a level that goes beyond mere observation. This depth of experience suggests that what's being preserved isn't just a recording of events, but the actual consciousness that experienced them, maintained within the spirit tree's luminous core. The ethical implications of this preservation are staggering. If the spirit tree truly absorbs and maintains the consciousness of the deceased, it carries within itself hundreds, perhaps thousands of individual spirits, each with their own memories, their own perspectives, their own sense of self. The tree doesn't just remember them. In a very real sense, they continue to exist within it, their thoughts and experiences adding to the vast chorus of consciousness that comprises the tree's greater awareness. This could explain the spirit tree's profound wisdom and emotional depth. Its understanding doesn't come solely from its own experiences, but from the accumulated knowledge of every spirit it has absorbed. When the tree speaks of love, loss, hope, and despair, it draws from a reservoir of experience far greater than any single being could accumulate. It has loved through 1,000 hearts, lost through 1,000 griefs, hoped through 1,000 dreams. But this preservation comes with a terrible burden. Imagine being aware of every tragedy, every moment of suffering, every desperate final thought of every spirit you absorbed. The spirit tree doesn't just know about these experiences, it remembers them as if they were its own. The weight of such accumulated sorrow, multiplied across generations, would be crushing for any consciousness to bear. This also raises uncomfortable questions about identity and individuality. When the spirit tree absorbs a fallen spirit, does that spirit maintain their distinct sense of self within the greater whole? Or do they dissolve into the collective, their experiences preserved, but their individual identity lost in the vast sea of accumulated consciousness? The game offers hints, but no definitive answers, leaving us to grapple with the implications ourselves. The collective consciousness theory gains additional support from the behavior of the spirit, wells scattered throughout Nibel. These pools of rejuvenating energy don't just restore health, they provide moments of clarity. Instances where Ori seems to gain understanding or insight. If the spirit wells are extensions of the spirit tree's power, as the lore suggests, then they might also serve as access points to its collective memory. Each restoration could be accompanied by fragments of knowledge from the preserved spirits, subtle guidance from those who walked these paths before. We see further evidence in the way certain locations in both games seem to resonate with memory. Places where significant events occurred, where many spirits fell, or where great emotions were experienced, seem to retain an echo of those moments. This isn't just environmental storytelling. It could be the spirit tree's memories literally saturating the environment, the accumulated experiences of the preserved spirits leaving permanent impressions on the world itself. The spirit tree's reaction to Ori throughout both games takes on new meaning when viewed through this lens. The tree doesn't just recognize Ori as its child, it sees in Ori the echoes of every spirit it has known. The love it expresses isn't simple parental affection, but the concentrated love of an entire civilization channeled through a single consciousness. When the tree calls Ori home, it speaks with the voices of ancestors Ori never knew, all preserved within its luminous heart. This preservation of consciousness might also explain the cyclical nature of spiritual existence in the Ori universe. Spirits aren't just born from the spirit tree, they're potentially reborn, constructed from the preserved elements of those who came before. Each new spirit might carry within them fragments of ancient memories, pieces of long-lost personalities, creating a form of reincarnation that maintains continuity across generations while allowing for new growth and change. The weight of revival, Ku's resurrection. The revival of Ku in Will of the Wisps stands as one of the most emotionally powerful moments in the entire series. But beneath the surface of this miraculous resurrection lies a complex web of spiritual mechanics and hidden costs that most players never fully comprehend. Ku's death and subsequent revival aren't just plot devices designed to tug at heartstrings, they're windows into the deepest mysteries of how the spirit tree manipulates the very essence of life and death. Ku's connection to the spirit tree differs fundamentally from that of other creatures in Nibel. While all life in the forest draws sustenance from the tree's light, Ku's bond runs deeper, more intimate, more essential. From the moment we meet her as an owlet in Will of the Wisps, there are subtle indicators that Ku exists in a unique spiritual category. Her pure white feathers, so different from her adoptive family's darker plumage, mark her as touched by the same light that flows through Ori. Her instinctive understanding of Ori's spiritual nature, despite being raised by Gumo's family, suggests an inherent connection to the forces that govern Nibel's spiritual ecosystem. When Ku falls in the game's opening act, struck down in the storm and left broken on Niwen's unforgiving ground, the game presents her death as absolute. This isn't a case of mere injury or temporary incapacitation. Ku's light, that essential spiritual energy that animates all living things in this universe, has departed. Her body lies still, not because she's unconscious, but because the fundamental force that granted her life has been extinguished. In the logic of the Ori universe, she is as dead as any being can be. Yet the spirit tree, through the accumulated power of Seir's reunified wisps, accomplishes what should be impossible. But this resurrection comes with costs that extend far beyond the obvious sacrifice of Ori becoming the new spirit tree. The energy exchange involved in returning life to the truly dead operates on principles that challenge the natural order of the forest itself. Consider what revival actually requires in this context. The spirit tree must not only restore the physical vessel, but also recall and rebind the departed spirit to its former shell. This isn't healing. It's a fundamental reversal of entropy, a denial of the natural cycle that governs all existence. The amount of raw spiritual energy required for such an act would be staggering, potentially equivalent to the life force of dozens, perhaps hundreds of ordinary creatures. But energy alone doesn't explain the full scope of what occurs during Ku's revival. The spirit tree must also restore or recreate Ku's memories, her personality, her sense of self. If spirits truly dissolve into the spirit tree's collective consciousness upon death, as the evidence suggests, then reviving Ku means extracting her specific essence from that vast sea of preserved souls. It's akin to removing a single drop of water from the ocean and expecting it to be exactly the same drop that entered. The game hints at the true mechanism through subtle environmental and narrative cues. Notice how the light that revives Ku doesn't simply flow into her. It reconstructs her, piece by piece, memory by memory. The revival sequence shows not just healing, but reformation, as if Ku was being rebuilt from the spiritual blueprint preserved within the spirit tree's consciousness. This suggests that the tree maintained Ku's complete spiritual pattern even after her death, holding her essence in reserve rather than allowing it to dissolve into the collective. This preservation and reconstruction raise profound questions about the nature of identity and continuity. Is the revived Ku truly the same being who died, or is she a perfect copy reconstructed from preserved information? Does she maintain continuity of consciousness across the death-revival boundary, or is there a gap, a discontinuity that marks the end of one existence and the beginning of another? The game doesn't provide explicit answers, leaving us to ponder these philosophical depths ourselves. The specific spiritual lineage connecting Ku to the spirit tree becomes clearer when we examine her role in the broader narrative. Ku isn't just a friend to Ori or a victim to be saved. She represents a bridge between the old world and the new, between the corrupted legacy of Kuro's rage and the potential for healing and renewal. Her white feathers, so reminiscent of her mother's original coloring before the blinding, mark her as a creature of light despite her dark heritage. The spirit tree's willingness to expend such enormous energy to revive her suggests she holds significance beyond mere companionship to Ori. Some evidence points to Ku potentially being a nascent guardian herself, a being destined to serve a role similar to Ori's, but in a different capacity. Her instinctive ability to fly, despite her damaged wing, parallels Ori's natural agility. Her immediate understanding of and trust in Ori mirrors the natural connection between spirits. Most tellingly, her revival through the spirit tree's power may have fundamentally altered her nature, infusing her with light in a way that transforms her from mere owl into something more. The exchange involved in Ku's resurrection also reveals the limits and rules governing the spirit tree's power. The tree cannot simply revive anyone at will. Specific conditions must be met. Particular connections must exist. Ku's revival is possible not just because of the raw power available, but because of her unique position within the spiritual hierarchy of the forest. She exists at an intersection of light and dark, spirit and flesh, making her a viable candidate for resurrection in a way that other creatures might not be. Furthermore, the timing of Ku's revival, occurring simultaneously with Ori's transformation into the new spirit tree, suggests a deeper connection between these events. Perhaps Ku's resurrection isn't just a gift from the dying tree to Ori, but a necessary component of the transition itself. By reviving Ku, the old consciousness ensures that the new spirit tree Ori isn't alone, that there remains a living connection to the previous generation, a friend who can remember and speak of who Ori was before the transformation. The prophecy fulfilled, cyclical destiny. The cyclical nature of the spirit tree's existence reveals itself not as random chance, but as an intricate pattern woven into the very fabric of this universe's reality. Each death and rebirth, each passing of the luminous torch from one guardian to the next, follows rhythms that suggest something far greater than natural succession. They hint at destiny, at prophecy, at forces that transcend individual will while paradoxically requiring personal sacrifice to fulfill. The will of the Wisps, that prophetic force referenced throughout the second game, isn't merely a poetic way of describing fate. Evidence throughout both games suggests it represents a genuine metaphysical principle, a current of destiny that flows through the spiritual realm just as light flows through living things. The spirit trees don't just happen to follow similar patterns of growth, crisis, and renewal. They're bound to these patterns by forces that predate even their ancient existence. Consider the mathematical precision of the cycles we witness. The original spirit tree of Nibel stands for countless generations, accumulating power, wisdom, and the preserved essence of myriad spirits. Then comes the crisis, not a random calamity, but a predictable breaking point where the tree's accumulated burden becomes too great to bear alone. The desperate call to Ori, which seemed like a panicked reaction to loss, might actually represent a predetermined trigger, a moment when the old guardian recognizes that its cycle is ending and a successor must be found. The decay that spreads through Nibel during the first game isn't just the absence of the spirit tree's light. It's symptomatic of a deeper imbalance. The tree has reached the limits of what a single consciousness can sustain. The accumulated memories of thousands of spirits, the weight of countless decisions, the burden of eternal vigilance. These pressures compound over time, until even a being of immense power begins to buckle under the strain. The corruption that Kuro spreads by stealing Sein might actually be a natural consequence that would have occurred eventually anyway, merely accelerated by her intervention. This cyclical pattern extends beyond individual trees to encompass the entire spiritual ecosystem. Notice how each game presents a similar arc: a young spirit separated from their tree, a journey to restore balance, and ultimately a transformation that perpetuates the cycle. This isn't repetitive storytelling, but rather a reflection of a fundamental pattern that governs this universe. Just as seasons cycle in the physical world, so too do the spiritual guardians cycle through phases of growth, maturity, crisis, and renewal. The prophecy aspect becomes more apparent when we examine the specific language used throughout Will of the Wisps. Characters speak of Ori's destiny not as possibility but as certainty, as if the outcome was determined long before Ori's birth. The Moki, those ancient creatures who've witnessed multiple cycles, demonstrate a fatalistic acceptance of events that suggests they've seen this pattern before. They grieve for what must happen, not what might happen, indicating their recognition of an inescapable pattern. But this destiny isn't purely deterministic. The prophecy requires choice, sacrifice, and love to fulfill itself. Ori could have refused the call, could have chosen self-preservation over transformation. The fact that the cycle depends on voluntary sacrifice rather than forced transition speaks to a universe where free will and predestination somehow coexist. The pattern provides the framework, but individuals must choose to complete it. The cosmic significance of this cycle extends far beyond Nibel and Niwen. References throughout both games hint at a vast world filled with forests, each with their own spirit trees, each following similar patterns of guardianship and renewal. The cycle we witness isn't unique to Ori's story, but part of a grand design that maintains balance across an entire world, perhaps an entire universe. Each spirit tree represents a node in a vast network of consciousness and light, all connected, all following the same fundamental rhythm. Future threats to this cycle loom in the implications of what we've learned. What happens if a spirit tree refuses to yield to its successor? What if the corruption spreads faster than new guardians can emerge? The games hint at ancient calamities, times when the cycle was broken and entire regions fell into permanent decay. The Gorlick Ori scattered throughout Niwen tells of a lost civilization, perhaps one that failed to maintain its spiritual guardians and paid the ultimate price. The broader implications suggest that the spirit trees serve a function beyond individual forest management. They might be antibodies in a living world, consciousness nodes that prevent some greater corruption from taking hold. The decay we see when a spirit tree fails isn't just local environmental damage, it could be symptomatic of something far worse, trying to emerge, something that only the combined light of the spirit trees keeps at bay. We see hints of these greater threats in the unusual enemies encountered throughout both games. The corrupted creatures aren't just animals driven mad by darkness. Some display signs of otherworldly influence, of corruption that originates from outside the natural order. The spirit trees might stand as sentinels against invasion from forces that exist beyond the physical realm, guardians not just of forests, but of reality itself. The preparation for future cycles also reveals itself in subtle ways. Notice how each new spirit tree seems stronger than the last, more capable of handling the accumulated burden. Ori, infused with the experiences of their journey and the power of Seir, begins their guardianship with advantages the previous tree lacked. This isn't just character growth, it's evolution, each cycle producing a guardian better equipped to face the challenges ahead. The unseen sacrifice, what the tree remembers. In the quiet moments between heartbeats of light, when the forest sleeps and only the ancient consciousness remains awake, the spirit tree remembers everything. Not just the grand moments of triumph and tragedy that define Ori's journey, but every small sorrow, every brief joy, every whispered hope of every spirit that ever drew breath beneath its boughs. This omniscience, this terrible gift of perfect memory, represents perhaps the greatest sacrifice any guardian makes, the inability to forget, to find peace in ignorance, to experience the mercy of time's gentle erosion of pain. The spirit tree knew what would happen when it called out for Ori. This isn't speculation, but observable fact woven throughout the narrative. The tree's narration carries the weight of foreknowledge, the burden of understanding consequences before they unfold. When it speaks of the light that blinded Kuro, there's no surprise in its voice, only resignation. The tree knew that calling Ori would provoke catastrophe, understood that its desperate act of love would cascade into suffering for countless innocent beings, yet it made that choice anyway. This foreknowledge transforms our understanding of every event in the games. The spirit tree didn't just react to crisis, it chose crisis, accepting the lesser of evils in a situation where no perfect solution existed. Without Ori, the tree would have eventually failed anyway, unable to sustain itself indefinitely while separated from one of its essential spirits. The decay would have come slower perhaps, but more thoroughly, with no hope of renewal. By calling Ori and triggering Kuro's rage, the tree compressed generations of gradual decline into a single catastrophic event that at least offered the possibility of resolution. But knowing the necessity doesn't diminish the weight of responsibility. Every creature that suffered during Nibel's decay, every spirit consumed by corruption, every moment of Kuro's anguish over her lost children, the spirit tree remembers them all with perfect clarity. These memories don't fade with time or soften with distance. They remain as sharp and immediate as the moment they occurred, a permanent archive of suffering that the tree must carry forever. The conscious choice to call suffering, even in service of preventing greater suffering, marks the spirit tree as more than just a force of nature. Natural forces don't grapple with moral complexity or carry guilt for necessary evils. The tree's awareness of its role in the tragedy, its understanding of the pain it caused, elevates it to a truly tragic figure, omniscient enough to see all possible futures, powerful enough to influence them, yet ultimately bound by circumstances that force impossible choices. Consider the specific moments the tree chooses to share through its narration. It doesn't just recount events, it confesses, seeking understanding if not absolution from an audience that might never fully grasp the weight it carries. When the tree describes watching Ori grow from afar, separated by the darkness it inadvertently created, we hear not just observation, but yearning, regret, and a love that transcends the physical barrier between them. The tree's memory extends beyond just events to encompass the inner experiences of those it has absorbed. Through the preserved consciousness of countless spirits, the tree doesn't just know about suffering, it experiences suffering multiplied by every soul it contains. When a parent lost a child in Nibel's long history, the tree felt that loss. When lovers were separated by death, the tree experienced both sides of that grief. When warriors fell defending their home, the tree absorbed not just their courage, but their fear, their pain, their final desperate thoughts. This accumulation of experience explains the tree's profound empathy, even for its enemies. When Kuro attacks, driven by rage and anguish, the tree doesn't respond with hatred, but with understanding. It recognizes in Kuro's maternal fury an echo of its own desperate love for Ori. The tree has been both victim and perpetrator, protector and destroyer through the countless lives it has absorbed. It understands Kuro because it has been Kuro, in 1,000 different forms across 1,000 different tragedies. The burden of omniscience extends to anticipating future sorrows as well. The tree knows that Ori's journey will demand sacrifice, that friends will fall, that pain is inevitable on the path to renewal. Yet it cannot warn, cannot intervene directly, cannot spare its child the suffering that forges strength. The tree must watch, remember, and endure, adding Ori's trials to its ever-growing catalog of necessary sorrows. Even moments of joy carry weight when remembered eternally. The tree preserves the happiness of spirits long dead, maintaining their moments of pure bliss alongside their despairs. Imagine experiencing the first love of countless beings, feeling that rush of emotion not dulled by repetition but kept fresh and immediate across centuries. The tree doesn't just remember happiness, it perpetually experiences all happiness it has ever witnessed, a sensation that might seem blessed, but becomes overwhelming when multiplied beyond mortal comprehension. The tree's perfect memory also means it cannot engage in the small mercies of self-deception that help mortal beings cope with trauma. It cannot minimize its mistakes, rationalize its choices, or gradually adjust its memories to be more bearable. Every failure remains as stark and undeniable as when it occurred. Every consequence of every decision plays out in perpetual clarity, denying the tree even the comfort of uncertainty about whether things might have been different. The Eternal Guardian's legacy. As our journey through the depths of the spirit tree's mystery draws to a close, we find ourselves standing before a truth far more complex and beautiful than we might have imagined when we first set foot in Nibel's glowing forests. The spirit tree isn't just a magical plot device or a convenient narrator for Ori's tale. It's a conscious being of immense depth, carrying within its ancient bark the preserved essence of an entire civilization, the weight of impossible choices, and the eternal burden of perfect memory. Through our exploration, we've uncovered how the spirit tree exists as a dual entity, its physical form anchoring a consciousness made of pure light. We've seen how Sein and Seir represent not mere magical companions, but fragments of the tree's own mind, extended into the world to guide and protect. We've grappled with the uncomfortable implications of a being that absorbs and preserves the dead, maintaining their memories and perhaps their very consciousness within its own. We've witnessed the true cost of miracles like Kuro's resurrection, and understood the cyclical destiny that binds all spirit trees to patterns of growth, crisis, sacrifice, and renewal. But perhaps most importantly, we've glimpsed the profound loneliness and nobility of eternal guardianship. The spirit tree stands as a testament to the price of true protection, the acceptance of blame, the burden of necessary evils, the weight of remembering every sorrow while still choosing hope. In its sacrifice, we see reflected the fundamental truth that love sometimes demands terrible choices, that protection sometimes requires causing pain, and that true guardianship means accepting responsibility for consequences that ripple across generations. The legacy of the spirit tree extends far beyond the borders of Nibel or Niwen. In Ori's transformation into the new spirit tree, we see not an ending, but a continuation, a passing of consciousness and responsibility that ensures the preservation of all who came before, while allowing for growth and change. The cycle continues, but it evolves. Each new guardian building upon the foundation laid by their predecessors, carrying their memories while writing new chapters in the eternal story. Moon Studios has crafted something remarkable in the spirit tree mythology, a narrative element that functions on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, it's a magical tree that provides light and life to a forest. Dig deeper, and it's a conscious guardian making impossible choices. Deeper still, and it becomes a meditation on memory, identity, and the price of knowledge. At its deepest level, it asks us to consider what it means to truly protect something, to love something enough to accept the burden of its suffering, to remember everything while still choosing to hope. The spirit tree story resonates because it reflects universal truths about sacrifice, love, and the weight of responsibility. Every parent who has made difficult decisions for their children's well-being, every leader who has chosen between imperfect options, every person who has carried the burden of knowledge that brings pain alongside understanding, all can find something of themselves in the spirit tree's eternal vigil. As we look toward the future of the Ori universe, the mysteries we've explored today open more questions than they answer. If spirit trees exist throughout this world, maintaining the balance between light and corruption, what greater purpose do they serve? What force or intelligence designed this system of conscious guardians? Are there threats beyond the decay we've witnessed? Dangers that require such elaborate defenses to hold at bay? The cyclical nature of the spirit tree suggests that Ori's story, while complete in its current form, is just one revolution of an eternal wheel. Somewhere in that vast world, new spirits are being born from new trees, setting out on journeys that will eventually lead them back to become guardians themselves. Each cycle adds new verses to an endless song, new memories to the collective consciousness that defines and protects this luminous world. The true genius of the spirit tree's design lies in how it transforms what could have been a simple fantasy trope into something that challenges our understanding of consciousness, identity, and sacrifice. It asks us to consider whether preserving everything is truly kind, whether perfect memory is a gift or a curse, whether the needs of the many really do outweigh the needs of the few when you're the one making that calculation with full knowledge of what each individual will suffer. In the end, the spirit tree stands as one of gaming's most fascinating and tragic figures, a being of immense power constrained by responsibility, blessed with perfect knowledge and cursed with the inability to forget. Forever watching over a world it loves, while carrying the weight of every sorrow it has both witnessed and caused. Its light illuminates not just the forest paths, but the complex moral landscape that defines truly meaningful storytelling in games. The next time you guide Ori through those luminous forests, remember that every glowing leaf, every pulse of light, every whispered word of narration comes from a consciousness vast beyond imagining, ancient beyond measure, and burdened beyond mortal comprehension. The spirit tree watches, remembers, and endures, maintaining its eternal vigil not because it must, but because it chooses to, because love demands nothing less than everything. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden depths of Ori's spirit tree, please hit that like button and subscribe to Keen 7 Lore for more comprehensive explorations of gaming's most fascinating lore and stories. Your support means everything. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single person who joins our growing community helps us continue bringing these deep analytical journeys into the worlds we love. Thank you for joining me in the heart of Nibel today. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the most profound truths in gaming often hide just beneath the surface, waiting for those willing to look deeper.